Council passed an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations and transfers to go to the police and fire departments to the tune of several hundreds of thousands of dollars so that they can perform their jobs next year. The auditor's office, through Gary Young, informed me that in order to use capital monies to do that, we needed an amendment. I had suggested a couple of weeks ago that I amend that ordinance to include a section to temporarily suspend the capital formulas, but I'm before you with a better approach. The ordinance before you tonight amends codified ordinance, section 181.14, called the allocation of funds. That ordinance says, and has for decades, that all the income tax money that comes in is general fund money, but for a specific portion that's allocated to capital improvement. It's a very specific formula. Over the years, this council has, through codified ordinances, occasionally built in exemptions that would allow the city to spend capital improvement monies for general fund purposes. Things like engineering, mostly tangible things like equipment and streets and parks and playgrounds. And you've carved exceptions over the years. The most recent ones being the water reclamation facility in 2008 and some monies that were temporarily used for the incentive buyout program also in 2009, passed in 2008. What I have before you tonight is simply adding a one-sentence addition to those list of exemptions that exist. There are 14. I'm proposing you add a 15th at the suggestion of the auditor's office. It would make another exception to the fixed rule about general and capital money, saying this: police and fire pension bonds, long-term debt obligation to include principal and interest due in 2010. The reason for the request was this caps it and puts it in stone, so to speak, in the codified ordinance for this year only, for 2010 in order to prepare for 11. And I'm asking if you would consider passing it tonight upon second reading for these reasons. Our debt obligation becomes due in a few days on December 1st. The appropriations and transfers you passed last week to go into the police and fire funds need to be made very soon. So the auditor requested that I ask council, and I wholeheartedly agree, to please pass this tonight to make that work less cumbersome and to get everything done in a timely fashion. So again, to sum up, I'm asking you to add one sentence exception per your wishes earlier to use capital funds to make an exception for this year to allow some capital funds to go into the general fund for police and fire.
We, when council, continually permit the use of capital funds to pay salaries. That was never the intention of capital funding. It's scary when we keep getting into it because our buildings do need repair, we do need capital projects done, we do need other things accomplished. And when we asked the taxpayers to pass the income tax level, we told them, and none of us were here at that time, but they were informed that 75% of it would be general fund and 25% of it would be to capital improvement fund. I think we should hold to that.
How about on the move to take capital improvement monies and put it into police and fire?
Yeah, that actually was announced back in March when we did the budget.
Right, you have any concerns about diluting capital improvement
we
money?
talked about this in March when we realized that we had to cut another $3 million this year on spending. One of the things that we did is we put a stopgap in there and said, we're going to set aside as much capital as we can back in March and not spend it because we knew that this year was going to be tight, and depending on how the following months went, we may need that as a stopgap. And so, as it turns out, we were able to have that in reserve because we chose not to spend it nearly a year ago, saying that in order to be able to get through this tough economic times, that may be a support cost. Council approved it back when they did the budget, and they approved it a month ago. We agreed upon it. This was just allowing it to actually happen.
So, and it's not going to damage the city's ability to do capital improvements?
Well, the funny part about it is because of outside stimulus money that we were able to bring in, and we lobbied very hard hard and applied for as much as we could. We spent more dollars in Canton on pavements, road repairs and pavements this year than we can go back, 10, 15, 20 years in time. We've never spent this much at one time. So even if we cut back on capital, including reducing our paving spending from the city's budget, we actually spent more because we were able to bring in outside dollars. Okay. So, yeah, it's a concern, but we did $6 million worth of paving this year, and when we normally spend $1 million. So, it's kind of you figure out ways to make it work.